Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of Michigan, and I'm owner and operator of In Progress Counseling. I was part of a conversation over this last weekend where I was talking to a young adult, and the young adult was having just a lot of questions, really wrestling through some gunk and having some frustrations with things. And that to me is one of the most sacred places to spend time when we're actively asking questions and we're exploring and we're wondering and we're talking to wise counsel and we're just really just trying to develop an understanding of complexity. And in our conversation, there was a number of us talking, and there was one person that kept I would say bypassing the lament that this young adult was having and really went into kind of cheerleading and rescuer mode and just kept telling this young adult how they should think about it. Well, you need to think about it this way, or look at it from this point of view, or if you just did X, X, Y, Y, Z, Z, you would get right through this. And I found myself just feeling really unsettled with how much intensity to fix the situation was going on, because that place of wrestling and curiosity and that place of confusion and uncertainty, that's really sacred ground. And when other people come along and talk us right out of it, or try to push us through it, or try to highlight it, or bypass it, or silver line it, I don't know, I said highlight, I meant silver line. What it does is it somehow can stigmatize that someone's in that space. And I said to this young man, I said, hey, I need to share something with you. I said, I'm 38 years old. 38 is the same age my sister was when she passed away. And I said, I'm a year out from getting my doctorate. That's a really big life accomplishment. That's really exciting. That's something that I'm sacrificing a lot for. Some of the motivation from that comes from my story, where through different life happenings, there's this eagerness to better understand mental health. There's also this grand tragedy of my sister's life ending at this same age several years ago, with a much different response to some of the things that I'm pursuing education for, right? There's adaptations, there's grief, there's pain, there's so much complexity that my story went this way and her story went this way, and it shares some of the same roots, right? And I know I've shared this before, but what was powerful about this conversation with the young adult is I said, I don't think I'm ever going to live in a world where that actually makes sense to me. I'm not ever going to be able to language, well, why a PhD for staff? Why a career that she loves? Why does she get to be the cheerleader for people? Why does she get to enter into spaces that are incredibly exciting? And the outcome of a dear and beloved family member, it's premature, it's tragic, it's awful. I said to him, I said, I can't explain that. I can't logic my way through it. I can't even hold the complexity in my feelings around it, because there's anger, there's confusion, there's uncertainty, there's awe, there's gratitude. It's too much. And to simplify it to some sort of reductionistic answer of how, if I just look at it from this way, or if I just do this thing, that complexity isn't there anymore. That complexity is going to follow me through my life. If I'm blessed to be 80 years old, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to think, I don't get it though. I don't get how. Now, it's not that I have to have an answer, and that's what I was trying to invite this friend towards. You don't actually have to have the answers. You're willing to ask the questions, which is beautiful. You're willing to wrestle it out. You're willing to make meaning out of some of the things. And I said, there's going to be a big question mark in that part of my life until I no longer have breath in my lungs. That's what it looks like. I have things that I get to sit in with clients day after day that we will never be able to make sense of. Why me? Why that? Why that response? How did I adjust to it this way? Why do I have to work so hard to move away from it? There are not answers for that. What there is holy and sacred space to ask questions and to be in it together. And my perception is that's what that young man was asking. He's saying, I'm confused. Is it okay to be here? And often people come along and they're like, no, let me get you out of that gunk. You don't have to be in that discomfort. Let me give you some quick, a highway away from discomfort, and everything will be fine if you just look at it from my point of view. Friends, it doesn't work that way when it's really fundamentally confusing contexts that the answers are too big or too complex or too out there for me to make sense of here. And that's the invitation today. If you're feeling, misunderstood, if you're feeling like someone is disallowing that complex space of question asking and confusion, I want to at least normalize it for you, because I think there's questions I ask with my life knowing I'll never get the answer for them. And so there's modes of operating and there's ways I show up to acknowledge that those things have happened, to honor that they've happened, to, if all goes well, intervene on other people's life stories so some of those tragedies don't continue to be, manifolding and put on repeat. But the question of why am I here and why is she not? I have no freaking idea. And when I stop long enough to sit in that, I think there's just a holy reverence for I'm never going to understand it. There's things we're just simply not going to understand. I can move forward. I can be aware of it. I can share my lament with others, but I can't solve it. There's not a way to do that.